A man walked away. A trash can closed. Inside, a small life kept breathing. He wasn't meant to stop, just another passerby, a quiet man with old scars and steady eyes. But beside him stood a German shepherd who noticed everything, what others ignored. He couldn't, because this wasn't just cruelty. It was something hidden, something organized, something waiting. And in that moment, without a word, he chose not to walk away. Before we begin, please like and follow to support us. Thank you. A pale winter morning settled over the narrow alley behind town, where frost clung to rusted metal, and silence lingered longer than it should. Ryan Carter ran at a steady pace, his breath controlled, each step measured like it had been trained into him years ago, and never quite left. He was 35, tall and powerfully built, broad-shouldered with a chest that carried strength without excess. His short dark brown hair was cut in a clean military style, and a light stubble framed his sharp jawline. His eyes, focused, observant, moved constantly, reading the world without appearing to. Years as a Navy SEAL had shaped him into a man who noticed things others learned to ignore. Beside him moved Max, a 6-year-old German shepherd with a strong athletic frame, black and tan coat, upright ears, and amber eyes that carried a quiet intelligence. Max did not pull on the leash. He matched Ryan's rhythm perfectly, disciplined, alert, and deeply attuned to the man he followed. The alley stretched ahead, quiet except for the distant hum of the waking town, until a sharp metallic clang cut through the air. Ryan stopped, not gradually, instantly. Max had already frozen, ears forward, body still, eyes locked on a dented metal trash can halfway down the alley. The silence that followed felt wrong, not empty, but interrupted. Ryan's gaze shifted. A man stood near the trash can, turning away as if finishing something trivial. He was in his mid-40s, heavyset, with a sagging posture that suggested a life spent avoiding effort. His skin was weathered and uneven, his nose slightly flattened, and his thinning hair clung in greasy strands. His expression held no anger, no urgency, only indifference, the kind that came from doing the same thing too many times without consequence. Ryan stepped forward. "What did you just put in there?" The man glanced back, unimpressed. "Trash." Max moved one step closer, silent, his body low but steady, a quiet warning without sound. Ryan reached the bin and lifted the lid. Inside, beneath a layer of damp plastic and discarded paper, something small shifted. He saw it immediately. A puppy. It was no more than a few months old, its fur matted and dull, its body too thin for its size. Its legs trembled as if even the act of breathing required effort. Black and tan, like Max, but faded, as if the world had already worn it down. Its eyes were open, but distant, not afraid, not curious, just waiting. Ryan exhaled slowly, something tightening behind his ribs. He reached in, careful, deliberate, and lifted the puppy out. It didn't struggle, didn't whimper. It simply allowed itself to be held, its small body light in a way that felt wrong. Too light, like something that had not been given enough reason to stay. Behind him, the man chuckled. "Told you. Just trash." Ryan didn't turn around. Max stood beside him now, his head slightly lowered toward the puppy, sniffing once, then stepping closer without touching. His tail didn't move, his eyes didn't soften, but he stayed. Ryan adjusted his hold, supporting the puppy gently against his chest. "No," he said quietly. "It's not." The man shrugged and walked away, his footsteps fading quickly, as if even he didn't care to stay long enough to see what happened next. Ryan remained still for a moment. The alley felt different now. He looked down at the puppy again. Its breathing was shallow, uneven, but steady enough to hold on. There was something in its stillness that unsettled him. Not weakness, but resignation. as if it had already decided the outcome of its own story. "We're not doing that," Ryan murmured, more to himself than to the animal. Max shifted, not forward, sideways. His ears flicked once, then locked in a different direction, toward the far end of the alley, beyond the line of abandoned buildings where the light didn't quite reach. Ryan followed his gaze. Nothing moved. No sound. No figure. But Max didn't relax. He stood there, muscles subtly engaged, attention fixed, not on what could be seen, but on what could be sensed. Ryan felt it then. That quiet pull. The same one he had felt before operations, before things went wrong or right, depending on how you survived them. He looked once more down the alley, then back at the puppy in his arms. "Let's go," he said. Max hesitated, just for a second. Then he turned and followed. At home, the air was warmer, quieter. The small house sat just outside town, modest and functional, the kind of place that didn't ask questions. Ryan set the puppy down on a folded blanket near the wall, then stepped back, giving it space. Max settled nearby, not touching, not hovering, just present. The puppy didn't move at first. Then, slowly, it shifted. A small breath, a slight lift of its head. Ryan watched. Something in him, something old, recognized that moment. Not recovery, not yet. Just the decision not to stop. Hours passed. By evening, the light had softened, stretching long shadows across the wooden floor. The house had settled into a fragile quiet, the kind that came after something had been interrupted. Ryan sat near the window, one hand resting on his knee, eyes half-focused on nothing in particular. Behind him, the puppy slept. Max, however, did not. He stood, not suddenly, but completely. His body went still, ears forward, gaze fixed toward the front of the house. Ryan followed the line of sight. Outside, beyond the thin curtain, a vehicle, parked across the road, engine running, no lights, no movement, just there, watching. The morning arrived quietly, but not gently, the kind of cold light that revealed more than it forgave, stretching across the yard and settling into the corners of Ryan Carter's small house, as if it had come to inspect what the night had left behind. Ryan was already awake. He sat at the edge of a wooden chair, elbows resting lightly on his knees, eyes steady, not tired, just thinking. Men like him did not sleep deeply when something felt unfinished. Across the room, the puppy lay curled into the blanket where he had placed it. Its breathing had evened out, though each inhale still carried a faint tremor, like a memory that refused to loosen its grip. Max stood nearby, not pacing, not restless, but alert in a way that suggested his rest had never fully come. Ryan rose without sound and crossed the room. He crouched beside the puppy, his movements slow and deliberate, never sudden. Up close he could see more clearly now. The thinness of its limbs, the uneven texture of its fur, the faint marks along its side where pressure or neglect had left quiet traces. "You made it through the night," he said softly. The puppy did not lift its head, but its ear flicked once, acknowledging something without understanding it yet. That was enough. Max shifted behind him. Ryan turned slightly. The dog was not looking at the puppy. He was looking toward the door. Again. Ryan stood and walked to the window. The road outside was empty now. The vehicle from last night was gone, leaving no sound, no sign, nothing but the absence of it. But absence had never meant safety, not in Ryan's experience. "Stay," he said quietly. Max didn't move. Ryan stepped outside. The air carried that same cold edge, but there was something else beneath it, faint, almost hidden. He walked the perimeter of the house slowly, boots pressing into the thin frost. Near the edge of the dirt road, just before it curved away, he saw it. A set of tire marks. Not fresh enough to shine, but not old enough to ignore. Deep, deliberate, a vehicle that had waited. He crouched, ran his fingers lightly over the edge of the track, then stood again. "Yeah," he murmured. "You were real." When he returned inside, Max had moved, not toward the door, toward the back of the house. The dog stood near the far wall now, nose low, tracing something invisible across the wooden floorboards. His movements were slow, precise, almost surgical. Ryan watched him for a moment, then followed. "Show me." Max moved again, leading him to the rear door. Ryan opened it. The yard behind the house stretched toward a narrow line of trees, beyond which the old alley curved behind the abandoned buildings, the same direction Max had fixed on the day before. Max stepped out. His posture changed immediately. Lower, focused, intent. He moved across the yard, nose sweeping, then lifted his head sharply and turned toward the alley. Ryan followed without hesitation. There was no leash now. There didn't need to be. The alley felt different in daylight. Not safer, just more honest. Ryan moved slowly, eyes scanning, reading the space the way he had been trained to. Angles, shadows, lines of movement. Max advanced ahead, stopping once, then twice, adjusting direction in small increments until he reached a narrow gap between two buildings. The smell was stronger here. Ryan didn't need to be told. Max slipped through the gap. Ryan followed. On the other side, the space opened into something larger, a neglected lot, hidden from the main road, surrounded by decaying structures that leaned like they had given up on standing straight. At first glance, it looked empty. Then Ryan heard it. Not loud, not clear, but there. A sound, thin, uneven, breathing, movement, something alive that had learned not to be noticed. Max moved toward it immediately. Ryan followed him to a rusted door set into the side of one of the buildings. The wood was splintered, the hinges worn, but it was closed, carefully, intentionally. Ryan paused. He listened. Nothing obvious, but Max didn't move. That was enough. Ryan reached out and pushed the door open. The smell hit him first. Not rot, not decay, something cleaner than that, controlled, managed. Inside, the light was dim, filtered through narrow gaps in the boards. It took a moment for his eyes to adjust. Then he saw them. Cages, not many, but enough. Metal enclosures lined along the wall, some empty, some occupied. Inside them, dogs, different sizes, different ages, but all sharing the same stillness. Not aggressive, not frantic, just quiet in a way that felt learned. One of them lifted its head as Ryan stepped inside. A medium-sized dog, its coat dull but once clearly strong, eyes watching without expectation. Another lay curled tightly, barely moving. A third shifted weakly, its body too thin, ribs visible beneath its fur. Max stood beside Ryan, completely still. No barking, no lunging, just presence. Ryan exhaled slowly, something inside him settling into place. Not calm, not anger, but recognition. "This isn't random," he said under his breath. A voice answered from behind him. "No, it isn't." Ryan turned. A woman stood in the doorway, her posture cautious but steady. She was in her early 60s, slender, with a narrow frame that seemed shaped more by endurance than comfort. Her gray hair was pulled back into a loose knot, a few strands falling across her pale, weathered face. Her eyes, soft but sharp, carried the kind of awareness that came from watching too much for too long. She wore a faded brown coat, hands tucked into the pockets, shoulders slightly hunched against more than just the cold. "Didn't expect anyone to come looking in daylight," she said quietly. Ryan studied her for a moment. "You know about this place." She nodded once. "I live nearby. Been seeing things, hearing things, nights mostly." Her gaze shifted briefly toward the cages, then away again, as if looking too long would cost her something. They don't stay long. The dogs. Who's they? The woman hesitated, not out of fear, out of habit. Finally, she spoke. Men. Trucks. Same schedule. Come after dark. Take the ones they want. Her jaw tightened slightly. Leave the rest. Ryan glanced back at the cages. Max moved forward, stopping in front of one of them. Inside, a small dog shifted weakly, pressing itself closer to the bars. Ryan crouched. How long has this been happening? The woman looked at him, then down at her hands. Long enough that people stopped asking. A faint, bitter smile touched her lips. Easier that way. Ryan didn't respond immediately. He stood slowly, eyes moving across the room again, this time with purpose, patterns, placement, order. This wasn't neglect. This was selection. Do they come every night? He asked. The woman shook her head. No, every few days. Like they're following something. She looked at Max, then back at Ryan. You shouldn't be here. Ryan's gaze settled on the cages once more. Yeah, he said quietly. I should. Max turned his head toward the door. Ryan followed his line of sight. Nothing there. But the feeling had returned. That same quiet pressure. Something larger. Something not finished. Ryan stepped back, taking in the entire room one last time. This isn't the whole thing, he murmured. The woman didn't answer. She didn't need to. The days that followed did not feel like days at all, but like something stretched thin between waiting and knowing, where time moved forward, yet refused to settle. Ryan Carter did not return to the abandoned building immediately. Men like him understood that rushing toward something rarely revealed its truth. Instead, he watched. He adjusted his routine without breaking it, running the same paths, stopping at the same corners, becoming part of the landscape again. To anyone passing by, he was just a man reclaiming a quiet life. But inside, the old instincts had returned, not loudly, not violently, but with a steady precision that sharpened everything he saw. Max changed too. The dog moved differently now, no longer simply present, but engaged, his senses stretched outward beyond the visible world. He paused more often, lifted his head at passing vehicles, memorized scents carried on the wind. When he tracked, he did not rush. He followed, careful, intentional, as if he understood that what they were searching for did not want to be found. At home, the puppy, small, fragile, still unnamed, began to change in quieter ways. Its breathing grew stronger, its body steadier, though it still moved with hesitation, as if testing whether each step was allowed. Ryan found himself watching it more than he expected. Not out of worry, but recognition. There was something in the way the puppy held itself, something that reminded him of people who had survived too much, too early. "You're still here," he said one morning, crouching beside it. The puppy lifted its head slightly this time. Not fully, but enough. Ryan exhaled, just once. "All right," he said. "Then you get a name." He paused, not searching for something clever, only something true. "Hope." The word settled into the room without resistance. Max stepped closer, lowered his head, and exhaled softly near the puppy's side. Hope did not flinch. That mattered more than anything. But when night came, Hope still trembled. Not from cold, from memory. Ryan noticed it the third night. The pattern. The way Hope's body tensed at a specific hour, long before anything visible changed. Max noticed it too. He would rise from where he lay, move to the window, and stand there without sound. Watching, waiting. Ryan followed that instinct. On the fourth night, he did not sit inside. He waited outside. The air was colder than before, carrying the scent of distant frost and something else. Oil, metal, movement. Ryan stood in the shadow of the tree line beyond his yard, his posture relaxed, but his awareness sharpened into something quiet and exact. Max remained at his side. They did not speak. They did not need to. Time passed slowly. Then, a sound, not loud, but deliberate. An engine. Ryan did not turn immediately. He listened first. The rhythm of it. The distance. The direction. Max's ears shifted. The vehicle was approaching from the far road. Not the main route. The secondary one. Ryan stepped forward just enough to see. A truck. Dark-colored, older model, but well-maintained. Its headlights were dimmed, not off, but lowered enough to avoid drawing attention. It did not slow as it passed his house. It didn't need to. It already knew where it was going. Ryan watched it continue down the road, toward the direction of the abandoned buildings. He waited, counted, then followed. Not directly, not obviously. He moved along the tree line, keeping distance, using the terrain the way he had been trained to. Max moved ahead slightly, adjusting pace without command. They reached the edge of the abandoned lot just as the truck came to a stop. Ryan crouched low. From this distance, he could see two men step out. The first was tall and lean, his movements efficient, controlled. He wore a dark jacket, fitted, clean despite the setting. His hair was black, neatly cut, his face clean-shaven with sharp, defined features. His posture carried authority, not loud, not aggressive, but absolute. The kind of man who expected things to function because he said they should. This was not a worker. This was someone who directed. The second man was heavier, slower, with a slight limp in his step. His beard was uneven, thick in some places, patchy in others, and his eyes moved constantly, scanning without focus. He carried himself like someone who followed orders well, but never questioned them. They opened the back of the truck. Inside, crates, not makeshift, not temporary, designed. The first man spoke, his voice low but clear. "We take the strong ones first." The second nodded. "And the rest?" A pause. Then, "Leave them." Ryan felt something shift inside his chest. Not anger, something colder. Max remained still, watching, learning. The men moved toward the building. Ryan waited until they disappeared inside. Then he moved, closer, careful, each step placed with intent. He reached the edge of the wall and stopped, listening. Inside, the sounds were clearer now. Metal, movement. A faint whimper quickly silenced. A crate being lifted. Ryan glanced at Max. The dog's body had lowered, muscles tight, ready, but not moving. Not yet. Ryan understood. This wasn't the moment. Not for action, for information. He leaned slightly, just enough to see through the gap in the broken panel. Inside, the pattern revealed itself fully. The men moved from cage to cage, selecting, not randomly, not emotionally, with purpose, evaluating size, strength, responsiveness, inventory. Ryan's jaw tightened. He watched as one of the weaker dogs attempted to stand, only to collapse. The second man barely glanced at it before turning away. Irrelevant. Ryan exhaled slowly. That was the word. Irrelevant. Max shifted once, just enough to signal awareness. Ryan stepped back. He had seen enough, for now. As the men loaded the selected crates into the truck, Ryan retreated into the shadows, his mind already moving ahead, mapping what came next. Behind him, the building stood quiet again. Not empty. Never empty. Just waiting for the next time. Ryan looked once more toward the truck as it drove away into the dark. "This is bigger than a drop point," he said quietly. Max stood beside him, still, focused. Ryan's eyes moved back to the building, then to the road, then to the distance beyond. They're moving them somewhere. And for the first time since this began, he knew he wasn't just following a trail. He was stepping into a system. The night arrived without warning. as if the sky itself had decided there would be no soft transition this time, only darkness settling in all at once, heavy and deliberate over the quiet edges of town. Ryan Carter stood at the back of his truck, checking the equipment one last time. His movements were calm, efficient, stripped of anything unnecessary. He wore the same green tactical shirt and camouflage pants, the fabric worn but dependable, like everything else in his life. His expression remained steady, but something in his eyes had sharpened. Not anger, not urgency, but certainty. This was no longer observation. This was action. Max stood beside him, body still, ears upright, watching the road as if he could already sense what was coming. Inside the house, Hope slept. Not deeply, not peacefully, but enough. Ryan glanced toward the door once before closing the tailgate. "Stay," he said quietly. Max didn't move. He didn't need to be told twice. The sheriff's office sat at the edge of town, a low building that had seen better years but refused to collapse into neglect. Inside, the lights burned steady, casting a muted glow over desks cluttered with paperwork that spoke of problems people preferred to keep small. Sheriff Daniel Reeves stood near the window when Ryan entered. He was a man in his early 40s, lean but strong, with a posture that suggested discipline rather than force. His short brown hair was streaked faintly with gray, and his face carried the kind of lines that came not from age, but from decisions made under pressure. His eyes were sharp, observant, and, unlike many, unwilling to look away when something didn't sit right. "You took your time," Reeves said, his voice even. Ryan stepped closer, placing a small device on the desk, a recording, silent for now. "I needed to be sure." Reeves glanced down at it, then back up. "And now?" Ryan met his gaze. "Now I am." There was a pause, not hesitation, recognition. Reeves nodded once. "Then we don't do this halfway." Mara Ellison arrived 10 minutes later. She moved with purpose, not haste, her steps quiet but deliberate. In her mid-30s, she carried a lean, focused presence, her dark brown hair tied back loosely, a few strands escaping around her face. Her features were sharp, her expression controlled, but her eyes, clear, unwavering, held something stronger than curiosity. Conviction. The kind that didn't bend easily once it found its ground. She wore a dark coat, practical boots, and carried a worn notebook tucked under her arm. Not for show, for record. "You're the one who found it," she said to Ryan. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Mara studied him for a moment, then nodded slightly, as if confirming something to herself. "Good," she said. "Then we don't lose it." They moved after midnight. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough people to matter. Reeves led from the front, his posture straight, his movements precise. 2 deputies followed, quiet, focused, not asking questions they already knew the answers to. Ryan stayed slightly behind, not part of the uniform, but part of the purpose. Max moved at his side. Silent. Always silent. The abandoned building came into view, its outline darker than the night around it, as if it absorbed the absence of light rather than reflected it. Reeves raised a hand. They stopped, listened. Nothing. But Ryan knew better. He stepped forward, just enough to catch the scent carried faintly on the air. Fresh. Recent. "They're here," he said quietly. Reeves didn't hesitate. "Go." The door opened faster this time. No pause, no waiting. Inside, the scene unfolded not in chaos, but in interruption. 2 men stood near the cages, the same ones Ryan had seen before. The tall man turned first, his expression not surprised but irritated, as if something had disrupted a schedule he expected to run without interference. "You're early," he said calmly. Reeves stepped forward. "You're finished." The second man moved slightly, shifting his weight. his eyes flicking toward the exit before settling back. Not brave, not defiant, just calculating. Max stepped forward 1 pace, not aggressive, just enough. The room changed. The tall man's gaze dropped briefly to the dog, then returned to Ryan. "You brought a witness," he said. Ryan didn't respond. He didn't argue. He didn't threaten. He reached into his pocket and placed another device on the nearest crate. Reeves glanced at it. Mara, standing just behind, had already begun writing. "Everything," she said quietly, not looking up. "Say it all again." The tall man's expression shifted, not fear, understanding. "You think this stops anything?" he asked. Ryan's voice was calm. "No." A pause. "Then it just starts it." Reeves stepped forward, cuffs ready. The second man didn't resist. He didn't need to. The weight of it had already settled. Around them the dogs remained quiet, not panicked, not hopeful, just watching, as if they had seen too much to react to anything too quickly. Ryan moved toward the nearest cage and crouched. One of the weaker dogs shifted, its body trembling slightly. He didn't reach in immediately. He waited. "Easy," he said. The dog didn't move away. That was enough. Max stood beside him, his presence steady, grounding. Behind them, voices continued. Procedures, orders. The sound of something official finally stepping into a place that had existed too long without it. Mara moved carefully through the room, documenting everything. The cages, the crates, the marks, the absence of care where it should have been. "This won't stay buried," she said quietly. Reeves glanced at her once. "Make sure it doesn't." By the time the first light touched the horizon, the building no longer belonged to silence. Vehicles came, not hidden, not careful, official, measured, controlled. The system had been interrupted, not destroyed, but exposed. Ryan stood outside as the last of the dogs were carried out, each one handled with a care they had not known before. He didn't move to help, not because he wouldn't, because he had already done his part. Max stood beside him, still, watching, waiting, but for the first time, not searching. Spring did not arrive with celebration, but with quiet persistence, the kind that softened the ground beneath worn boots and brought color back to places that had almost forgotten how to hold it. Ryan Carter stood at the edge of his yard, one hand resting lightly against the wooden fence he had rebuilt piece by piece. The boards were straight, the hinges new, the structure solid, not just a boundary, but a decision made visible. Beyond it, the land stretched into gentle fields where the last traces of frost had given way to damp earth and the early promise of green. Max moved freely now, no longer stationed, no longer guarding. He walked the perimeter not as a sentinel, but as something simpler, something whole again. His black and tan coat had regained its natural sheen under the warmer light, his posture relaxed, but still attentive in that quiet, disciplined way that had never left him. His amber eyes no longer searched for threats at every movement. Instead, they followed something closer. Hope. The small puppy, once no more than a trembling weight in Ryan's hands, ran unevenly across the yard, her legs still learning the rhythm of strength. She stumbled once, corrected herself, then continued forward with a kind of determination that did not ask permission from the past. Her coat had begun to thicken, the dullness fading into a softer, richer color. Her eyes, once distant, now held something new, not certainty, not yet, but curiosity. That was enough. Ryan watched her in silence. There were no grand realizations in that moment, no declarations, just the steady understanding that something had changed and would not go back. Behind him, the door to the house opened. Evelyn Hart stepped out slowly, pausing for a moment as if allowing the light to adjust to her. She was a woman in her late 60s, tall in a quiet way, her posture upright despite the years that had settled into her frame. Her hair was silver white, pulled back neatly at the nape of her neck, and her skin carried the soft lines of time without bitterness. Her eyes were calm, observant, the kind that saw more than they said. She had been a veterinarian once, before the town had grown too small for the work she wanted to do, before people had stopped bringing animals in time. Now she came by every few days, not out of obligation, but because something here had asked to be continued. "They're healing faster than I expected," she said, her voice gentle but certain. Ryan nodded once. They had to. Evelyn watched Hope for a moment, then glanced toward the far side of the yard, where 2 other dogs, rescued from the building, rested beneath the shade of the fence. One of them, older, still carried hesitation in every movement. The other had begun to respond more, lifting its head when called, stepping forward when no one reached too quickly. "They'll come around," she said quietly. Ryan didn't answer, not because he disagreed, because he understood something else. Healing wasn't a guarantee. It was a chance. And sometimes that was all you could offer. Max approached Evelyn then, stopping just short of her, his posture respectful, but familiar. She reached down, her hand steady, and rested it briefly against his neck. He didn't lean into it. He didn't pull away. He accepted it. "That one," she said softly, "knows exactly what he's doing." Ryan glanced at Max. "Yeah," he said. "He always did." The sign went up that afternoon. Ryan didn't rush it. He had carved it earlier, the wood sanded smooth, the letters cut deep enough to last. He set it against the front gate, adjusted it once, then stepped back. No decoration, no excess, just words. No life is worthless because someone failed to see its value. Evelyn read it without comment at first. Then she nodded, just once. "That will matter," she said. Ryan didn't respond. He didn't need it to matter to everyone, just enough. The town changed slowly, not all at once, but in ways that could not be undone. People began to come, not crowds, not attention, just individuals. A man with an old blanket folded under his arm. A woman carrying a bag of feed she said she had extra of. A young boy who stood near the gate for a long time before stepping inside, his eyes fixed on the dogs as if he were seeing something he didn't yet understand. Ryan didn't ask questions. He didn't explain. He simply allowed it. That was how things grew. Not forced, not announced, but given space. The story made its way through town before it reached beyond it. Mara Ellison's article had done exactly what it was meant to do. Not outrage, not spectacle, clarity. Names were not hidden, patterns were not softened. The system, cold, efficient, indifferent, had been exposed in a way that could not easily be dismissed. The facility was closed, officially, permanently. But Ryan knew better. Systems like that did not disappear. They adapted, shifted, waited. He stood at the fence that evening, watching the road stretch beyond the fields, his posture still, his mind quiet. Max sat beside him, not alert, not tense, just there. Hope ran past them, chasing nothing in particular, her movements freer now, her steps more certain with each passing day. She stopped once, looked back, not for permission, not for safety, just to see. Ryan met her gaze, held it for a moment, then nodded, almost imperceptibly. That was enough. She turned and ran again. Inside the yard, life continued. Not perfect, not complete, but real. Evelyn gathered her things as the light began to fade, pausing once more at the gate. "You're building something here," she said. Ryan looked out across the land, then back at the dogs, then at Max. "Not building," he said quietly. "Keeping." Evelyn smiled faintly, then stepped out, closing the gate behind her. Ryan remained where he was. The air had softened. the light had changed. And for the first time since this began, there was no sense of something waiting in the dark, only the quiet presence of what had been chosen instead. Max shifted beside him, lowering himself onto the ground, his breathing slow, even. Hope curled near the fence, not in fear, but in rest. Ryan stood there a little longer. Then, without urgency, he turned and walked back toward the house. Sometimes, miracles don't arrive as thunder from the sky or voices in the dark. Sometimes, they come quietly, in the moment someone chooses not to walk away. Ryan didn't set out to change the world. He simply refused to accept that a life could be thrown away and called worthless. And maybe that's how God works most often, not through grand signs, but through ordinary people who decide to care when it would be easier not to. In our daily lives, we all face moments like that. A stranger in need, a quiet injustice, a life overlooked. And in those moments, we are given a choice, to ignore or to become part of a small miracle for someone else. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes in kindness. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what part stayed with you the most. And don't forget to subscribe, so together we can keep these stories alive. May God bless you, protect your home, and remind you, every single day, that you matter more than you know.